I'm gonna take a sip of tea, and then we are going to answer your publishing questions. Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ayn and I'm an events manager that works in the publishing industry, and today I am going to answer your publishing questions. Thank you so much to all of you that are in my community already on Twitter and Instagram. If you're not, do come and say hello. You send me some questions about publishing, questions that you have whilst you're trying to navigate the industry, and today I am going to answer all of your questions, which is really exciting. If I don't answer the question that you've asked, worry not. It probably means that it's a little bit special and I'm gonna dedicate an entire video to it. So stay tuned, make sure to subscribe and click the like button, because that really helps me to basically get in the grace of YouTube and get more people to find my videos. And without further ado, we are going to start. The first question I received is, how long should you aim to stay in an entry level for? And I love this question because I feel like I would have really wanted to know when I started out in the industry. The short answer sadly is there is no set amount of years that you need to spend in an entry level position, and it's all dependent on how quickly you learn your skills and responsibilities in the role that you're taking, how the structure of your department is, like what is sort of like the next step up, what was your prior experience. So there are so many different elements that will determine how long you will end up spending in an entry level position. I have spent, I think, about 3 years in between sort of like being an assistant and an executive before I then stepped into a management position. But I did have prior experience in different industries. So I wasn't fresh out of university. I had worked in several different places before for years. And so that's probably like, there's an element of that coming obviously with me into my sort of like journey in publishing. The important thing is like to make sure that you don't obsess over how many years you're spending in an entry level position. I don't think that obsessing over a title or a level ever helps your career. Just focus on doing a good job and try to understand what kind of progression path you can expect. That is definitely a very useful thing, and it was going to give you an understanding of how many years you might be able to kind of like spend in each of the stages. So I'm just thinking, for example, if you are in, let's say you're for a sales assistant and you're planning on becoming an executive, just try to understand like what the differences are in those two roles and see what the kind of things that you're missing. And then definitely push for that promotion, but also give it time, because I am a big believer that like skipping on the kind of like basics and learning the sort of like really kind of fundamental skills that you need for like any kind of career really doesn't serve you well. The next question is, how does the interview process change when you go from entry level to junior level? First thing that I would say is it massively depends on what you mean by entry level and what you mean by junior level. So if, for example, you're thinking about the switch between being an assistant and being an executive, what I would say is that what might change is when you're trying to get a job as an assistant, so a very sort of entry level position, you will be required to showcase your passion, your eagerness, and it's all about having the right attitude and the right understanding of the industry. Whereas I guess if you're trying to step into an executive position, you are going to be trying to focus on the skills that you have gained and the kind of results that you have already like showcased and achieved in your previous position. So there is like a slight change. I don't think there is a massive difference between like those two interview processes, but where you may find a difference is when you're trying to go from an executive position to a management position. So one big difference that I experienced when I stepped into my first management position was that I had to create a strategy and I had to present this strategy to sell a specific product. So that's something that I think is quite common. Sometimes you'll have tasks that you have to complete even in interviews that are for entry-level roles. But I think the ones that will be a little bit more kind of structured and will require you a lot more work are the ones when you're like obviously progressing into a more senior position. The other difference that I have found was that the people that I was going to do my interviews with obviously became more senior as well. So when you do an entry-level interview, you're probably likely to be talking to your hiring manager, perhaps someone from HR, or your hiring manager and a colleague of them. Sometimes you'll do a second stage where there is your hiring manager's boss. When you are trying to step into a more senior position, so if it's like a management position, as I said, you will have your hiring manager again. But the thing is, obviously, obviously your hiring manager is going to be like more senior, and therefore their boss is going to be more senior. So what has happened to me is that I often have had to talk to either the owner of the company, if it was a very small company, or the managing director of that company, and do kind of like a separate interview with them. And they are very different interviews. If you're interested in knowing like what's different about those kind of interviews, let me know in the comments and I will make a separate video on those. How to gain work experience. I think this refers to the fact that we are in a very particular situation. So depending on when you're going to be watching this video, I am filming this in February 2021, which means that we are still in the middle of a global pandemic, and it is particularly hard. We're all working remotely, and it's not as easy. Companies have not really been equipped to do virtual placements, although I think many are really trying to start something soon, and so doing work experience can be a bit hard. The advice that I'm going to give you is actually not from me. It is from Emma that runs the Slumbering Sloth podcast, which I am going to link down below in my video, and it is to create your own work experience. So she said this in a panel that we did recently all about side hustle, which I'm also going to link below in the description if you want to give it a watch. I think that's such great advice because right now, obviously you can apply for any virtual placement that there are, but at the same time, there's going to be a lot of people applying, and your best bet is to just like try and create some work experience for yourself. And the way you can do this is by working on a project, volunteering in different industries. I don't think you need to think about work experience specifically related to publishing. I understand that obviously that would be easier and better if you could get that, but you really do not need to do that to get into publishing. I didn't do any work experience in publishing before I actually got into publishing. Focus on skills, focus on transferable skills. Find like some positions, whether they're virtually or whether it can be like your own project that you can kind of like get your hands in and just like try to experiment and learn like new and interesting skills. How to make your cover letter stand out. Oh, this is like interesting. I love this question. I think there are so many different ways that you can make a cover letter stand out. I think the simplest way is to tell a story. If you're applying for a job in publishing, chances are that you love storytelling, you love books, and that can really come across if you manage to structure a cover letter in a way that is taking the person who's reading it through a journey. I really think that is a powerful way to kind of like showcase your passion in a more sort of like subtle and poetic way. So that's my first tip. But the second tip is also make sure that you make it very, very specific to the job that you're applying for. You hear stories all the time about how many applications publishers get, especially for entry-level positions. And the only way that you're gonna cut through the noise is if yours really catches their attention. So depending on what kind of role you're planning on applying to, make sure that you reference the projects and things that the person that is going to read the cover letter will immediately recognize, so that they can kind of think, okay, this person has done their research. This person knows what we're all about. And then the third tip would be, if you are a creative person and you are applying for something that is creative, make sure that you showcase that. Now, I have heard of the most incredible applications. There's like a friend of mine that created an app, which is, I mean, amazing and mind-blowing. There's people who have created sort of like an illustrated version of their CV, people who have created like lots of different ways of essentially really bring the CV to life and make it stand out from the crowd. So that's one thing that you can do as well. How to make yourself stand out from others who have more experience than you. This is a really interesting question, and I would say that one thing that you can do to make sure that you stand out, even though you might not have the same amount of experience as other people that are applying for the same job, is to make sure that you can showcase how your experience is not only more relevant, but is actually equipping you to face anything that is going to be thrown at you. Literally anything. And this is like one of the biggest things that I did at the beginning. For me, I was never the person that had like the most work experience or the most links to publishing or understood the books the most. Never. I wasn't really obviously like very well versed in sort of like books from the UK because I'm not from the UK, and I didn't do like free work experience in publishing houses, so I didn't have that knowledge, but I was so confident in my transferable skills, and that's what came across. It was the fact that I knew that my skills could be applied to the job that I was applying for. And that was probably what made me stand out, because there were lots of other people that had done work experience experiences in the publisher that I was applying to that probably would have been like a little bit more sort of like knowledgeable in terms of the kind of books or the kind of like departments or the ethos, but I just like focused on my skills. So find that thing that basically makes you stand out. Is it that you have like a huge passion and understanding of the books? Is it that you have like amazing transferable skills that are gonna make you literally invincible against any kind of like task that comes your way? Or whatever it is, just identify that unique skill and then lead with that. So advice to prepare for applying for jobs post-graduating, particularly in the current COVID climate. I think the advice that I would give to someone who's trying to apply for jobs now is exactly the same of what I would say for someone that was applying for jobs before like COVID hit, which is to really do your research. I think if you've got a bit of time and you've just graduated or you're about to graduate, make sure that you get in there early to try and understand the industry. I'm gonna link below something that I have written where you can kind of like go through all the steps to make sure that you're doing your research right. But what I would say is just like focus on doing your research, understanding the industry, and also like identifying at the best that you can, obviously, what would be your preferred area to work in. What would be your top piece of advice for anyone starting in their first role in publishing? This is an excellent question, and whoever asked this, very clever, because you do need to make sure that you're delivering after you have landed that first job. What I would say is, I'm thinking back about what I would have done differently, essentially, because I don't think I was perhaps like the most proactive person when I first started in publishing. What I would do differently is I would make sure to really take the time to understand and connect with the people that work in my team and my department overall, and really try to like form those relationships and connections, because those, in my opinion, are what is going to make your role successful or not. Publishing is all about collaboration, so it's massively important that you understand what kind of like links there are between the different departments, who you can ask for help, and also who you can help in return. So that would be like a big focus. And the other focus is to make sure that you track your results and that you ask for feedback regularly. I would say that is like the one thing that I didn't do. And then at the beginning, I remember being like over 1 year into a role and feeling really frustrated because I didn't know where my progression was going to like kick in, like where I was going, what my journey was going to be. But the reality is you do have to take ownership of your own progression, and it's important that you understand how you're performing in order to be able to do that. And also remember to have fun, and remember to just like enjoy the fact that you have landed your first job in publishing. Congrats! Oh, and I just remember a really big one. Ask loads of questions. Like, I think for some reason when I was like at the beginning of my career, I felt like asking questions was like not a good thing and I needed to like figure everything out by myself. But actually, when you start, that's when you want to like ask so many questions. I mean, a good rule of thumb is if you can Google it, don't ask it, because that's like annoying for people who are trying to train you and are also trying to do their own jobs. But if it's like something that is specific to the industry, ask. Ask about any acronyms that are coming up in meetings that you don't understand. Ask about any sort of like system training or like in general knowledge. Don't be afraid. That's like the best time to kind of get all your basics questions answered. What should or should not be included in your application in terms of YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and blogging? I think essentially try to include what you feel like would be relevant and what is related to your professional life, because like that's, with that you can't go wrong. I'm also going to like link somewhere in here or in the description down below my video about CVs, because that actually touches on that and gives you a little bit more info on this specific question. Do you have any tips on reaching out to publishing companies for help or internship opportunities without being too pushy in the current COVID climate? What I would say about reaching out to companies about work experiences, you kind of have to understand like what the company is doing at the time. So for example, right now, reaching out to a small company might be a good idea because they might need some help. However, do not reach out to large companies, because honestly, they have like schemes and they have like structures in place for which you're not going to be able to lend the work experience, and you're not going to annoy anyone. and people can always like not respond to an email, but it will just like be a bit of a waste of time. So I would say perhaps focus on like sort of small to medium sized companies, and if you want to like reach out, make sure you've done your research. So for example, to make sure that you're reaching out like and showcasing that you actually understand where the company is in at the time, what you can do is just like make sure that you have a look maybe online on LinkedIn or on social media if they have it, and on their website, to see like what's happening at the moment. Are they pushing out certain books? Are they creating some events that you could help them with? Or have they just probably advertised for like an entry-level role and therefore they're like trying to train someone? Just make sure that you're conscious of these things. I would say ask away, make sure that you're like reaching out to the right kind of companies, so avoiding the big fives. Make sure that you are kind of like upfront with what you are trying to give them in terms of like skills and experience, and what also you would be asking them to do, and make it as easy as possible for them to understand whether you'd be a good fit. And the final thing is like make sure that you're not pestering them. Like if you're sending an email out, don't start emailing them every week to just check. I would say maybe check after like a few weeks, maybe 3 weeks or so, and then if they don't come back to you, that's fine. Just, you know, leave it and move on to the next thing. So this came from an international student. Oh, hi, fellow international person. And the question is, any tips on the best styles formats for UK publishing application would be really helpful. I have done an entire video on this, so I'm gonna relink that. It's going to be in the description down below, and it's all about CVs, and it talks about all the things that you need to bear in mind. And I will probably do a cover letter video as well, because I think that's probably something that might be useful for people to see. Next question is, how is it best to stand out if you're career switching? I love this question. I think like career switches are gonna be like the stuff of the future. Everyone is gonna be career switching, so get ready. Make your skills as transferable as possible. Sorry, that's just like my thought. So if you're trying to career switch, I'm gonna say this, I say this all the time, and I think people are probably sick of hearing it, but it is all about transferable skills. Publishing, it's not the NASA. You do not need huge amount of qualifications to work in publishing. Publishers sometimes want you to think that, and it's just like, oh yeah, you know, like you need to understand this, you need to understand. No, you need to be able to use like the Office package. If you're like in a creative department, like probably InDesign and Photoshop might be like a good shout. You just need to be able to kind of like explain yourself and speak and write in a decent way. That's all you need. So having established that, whatever career you have done before, I definitely think that you're gonna have like transferable skills that are going to be applicable to publishing, no matter how different your previous career is. Identify those transferable skills, and the way you do that is take like a job description of a position in publishing that you might like to apply to, and just start mapping out every single like keyword that there is against your CV. So look at your CV, map it out, pick out what the transferable skills that you have are, and then I would say lead with that. So when you're trying to career switch, like a very important thing to do is like to make sure that you're drawing onto that experience that is so different, and you're kind of highlighting it to show that that is the reason why people should hire you, because you have a fresh perspective, new skills, an additional understanding of a different product maybe, or of a different market, and you can bring that in, and that's absolutely invaluable. It's gonna help you to stand out, it's gonna help you to like get into publishing a step ahead instead of having to start from the sort of bottom of the ladder, and is going to be, I think, the thing that is going to get you in. You can tell I'm super passionate about that, and I actually do offer one-to-one coaching sessions for people who are trying to switch their career, and I'm gonna link them down below so that you can kind of like have a look and reach out if you're interested in doing one with me. Next question is, how easy, hard is it to get into book publishing when you have worked in a completely different area for a while and you are over 30? Okay, I would say that it is very similar to the question before. So it is only hard if you don't know what direction you're about to take your career to. So if you don't know how the industry is structured and you don't have an understanding of how publishing works, you don't understand what departments there are, and you haven't identified your ideal kind of like move, like as in as specific as what kind of role or department you'd like to be in, then obviously it's going to be hard. But actually it can be quite easy if you have done all that research and try to understand like what would be like a natural transition from the position that you have. It's all about identifying the expertise and the essential skills that you're going to bring to the table and really focusing on those. Chances are that in the role that you are doing at the moment, there's going to be like skills and things and knowledge that you can bring into publishing to kind of like differentiate yourself from other candidates, and also to make sure that you bring that kind of like extra bit to the role as well. Okay, and those were all the questions that you have asked. As I said, if I haven't responded to your question or I haven't elaborated massively, it probably means that I'm going to do a full video on that soon. So make sure to subscribe, click the like button to support me, and let me know in the comment if you have like any other questions, because I would love to do another one of this and if this was helpful as well. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.